Today I am back at my off-grid cabin in the woods here, and I am going to be working on redoing some skirting on one side of the cabin. Over there is my main crawl access to the underside, the plumbing, some electrical stuff. It's always been kind of a mess ever since I got this place, so I want to finish that up, do some framing, put some new siding on there, and I also want to build a deck over that drainage pipe that I installed that connects to the gutter downspouts. That works great, by the way. All of my drainage and gutters that I installed a while ago, it's doing its job. It's capturing the rainwater and redirecting it so it's not soaking the decks and everything. But I did a late night Home Depot run last night, and I picked up all of this lumber that I'm going to use on this project here today. And this weather and these conditions are real throwback vibes for me, because when I first got my cabin, it was November of 2020, and right now it's late October, so it was around the same time of the year when I got this place. It was cold, it was wet, just like it is today, and the first thing I did was build that deck, and now I'm going to be doing some more deck building. So it feels good to be out here breathing this fresh air. It's a little cool, but once I start working, I'm going to warm up, and I'm excited to be back here working, getting back to my roots. So let's do it. That was harder than I thought it was going to be. I pulled out some dry 2x4s that I can use for framing underneath here. I got them from my scrap pile there. So what I'm going to do is remove some of this old moldy boards and reframe this skirting, and then I'll put the new siding on there. So while I'm here, I have to do a little plumbing repair. This fitting going to my hot water hose bib connection, there's a leak between this PVC and this brass fitting. But luckily, my stepdad Tim gave me this frost-free valve here, and I think it'll work perfect in place of that. That way there won't be any PVC at all, it'll just be metal to metal. I think that'll be better, less likely to leak. You know, while I'm here, I'm gonna replace this post, because I can actually shake it with my hand so it's not carrying a lot of weight, or like hardly any weight, and the bottom of it's all soft and rotten, so I'm going to replace it with a new pressure treat 4x4. This beam looks pretty rotten right here, but it's just this very far corner, so I'm not too worried about it. The rest of it looks really good and solid. Okay, in order to make this first one start the pattern correctly, I have to cut 5/8 of an inch off of that, and then I can start laying them out, and they'll line up with my 2-foot studs that I installed earlier. Okay, this next one's going to be a little tricky because it's going to be where the door for the crawl space is going to be. Plus, I have to cut around those 2 hose bibs, the cold and the hot. So there's going to be a lot of measuring and cutting and figuring out where all that stuff needs to go so that that sheet will slide over and fit right where it needs to go. Ooh. There's my door. Alright folks, it's the next day and I got my rain gear on. Let me tell you, this weather over the past 48 to 24 hours has been horrible. I thought it wasn't going to rain nearly as much as it has. It's just been pouring. Yesterday when I started, it wasn't too bad, and then it rained harder and I was like, okay, this is more rain than I thought, but it's not so bad. And then it rained harder and it rained harder. And I had already started working out there, so I was like, man, I just gotta finish. So I knew that it wasn't great for my power tools to be operating them in the rain. And then it sucks that the majority of that stuff got wet out there. Now it's not structural and it's all going to be exterior stuff forever, so eventually all that will dry out and I'm not too worried about it. But still, it's not ideal to do any of the things that I did yesterday in the pouring down rain. And I thought today the weather was going to be better, but it's not. It's rained more than it did yesterday. So I spent this morning editing that footage from yesterday, and now I got a few hours left of daylight, so I'm gonna go out in my rain gear and I'm going to get some rocks, which I need to get no matter what, and that's something that I can do in the rain and it's not really gonna make a difference. So I'm just gonna go out there and suffer for a few hours today and get that done, and then hopefully by tomorrow it won't be raining and I can work on the deck. This is definitely a project I should have done this summer when it was dry, but I didn't get around to it, so I'm having to do it now. Oh well. Got me a truckload of rocks. Hopefully that will be enough. We'll see. I couldn't get too many because that's a lot of weight right there, and that's a small truck. I didn't want to bottom out the suspension, so if I need to go back, I will. All right, guess what? It's not raining, just sprinkling a little bit of sprinkling, but I can handle that so much better than it's been. Okay, I'm gonna finish my door here, and then once that's done, I can start building the deck.
Having the mixed supercross and motocross, any number of races will pay you $1 million. That's their horse in the race. I don't know. I think yeah, 31's a lot.
Crap, it's a little tight. Ugh. There we go. Need to put some type of a handle on it, but I think that works. It's actually kind of good that it's tight, because then it stays shut. Don't even need a latch on it. Now if I get a board like this, a little bit longer one, I can put the generator here and run the generator, and this could protect the generator from getting wet when it's raining.
Where in Supercross, you know, like 2 races done, 3 weeks, 6, right, they're doable. Just wait, you know, they have to be careful that they don't push too hard and get hurt. You want to have every athlete, every rider give it their all. Because he can last. He's the only guy that can last that long. Jordan and doing all those guys doing all that stuff, form of expression that we weren't.
Ugly, but nobody will ever see it. Perfect. We're level. And we are equidistant. All right, I got the first beam to the new deck in place. Now what I'm gonna do is remove all of those old deck boards, and I drew a line along the ends there halfway across that beam. That's gonna play an important factor later, and I'm not quite sure how exactly I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna figure it out as I go, so I'm not even gonna try to explain my thought process. You'll just see what's gonna happen. All right, we got a skeleton here now. Let's go cut some deck boards.
I think it was. My favorites in my history, you know, my history of stuff.
Realize theirs. Why would they? They cornered the sports market on masculinity. Competes in their league. ESPN would love nothing more than to showcase Favre, Warren Sapp, Marshall Falk, Brian Urlacher, all in town, because I do think he's getting picked on here, and I think he's got a great team, and they're putting a cloud. Steve, before I get to the next topic, I want to tell you guys. Turns out that the Belichick system is really smart on the music industry and maybe the whole entertainment industry as a whole. Not only your mentors on the other side, but yeah, with Dion, if you know what's coming, you change it. But knowing a blitz is coming.
Now it's looking like a deck around here. I'm gonna go around and toenail these beams into those short little posts. Later on I'll probably add some brackets, but I don't have them right now, so just gonna make sure this thing holds while I cut and then screw the deck boards onto the top. Now all these 4x6 beams have been under that back porch since I got the cabin. I don't know where they're from. They all got all these holes in them, and they all say Brooks 7-31 DE6P DF6P. Looks like they're from like a shipyard or something. I don't know, no idea, but they're gonna be a great base for my deck here.
I don't have time for even making those connections on a friend level. Engage me in conversation that's fruitless.
Got my first deck board put on, and I figured out this angle on both ends just through a process of trial and error. I started with a scrap piece, drew on it with a pencil, went over to the chop saw, cut it, brought it back over here, checked it, cut it a little bit more, cut a little bit more, cut a little bit more until it was just the perfect angle. So I'm just gonna cut the angle on one side, push it up flush against this edge here, and then on that far end, I'm just gonna let them hang over, and then I'll run the skill saw along the edge so I have a nice straight cut on that far edge. All right, I'm back at the cabin with the materials that I need to finish phase 1 of this new skirting and deck project. I'm going to cut this sheet down to size to finish up the skirting over there, and then I'm going to add some caulk to all the little screws that I used to fasten the siding onto all that framing that I built and around all of the trim. Oh, and also I'm gonna add a trim piece to those hose bibs because I think it's gonna look a lot better with a nice piece of trim around that. I don't really like how that turned out, just trimming the siding around those hose bibs. last night I finished up the caulking and I just used my finger to run it along the edge, and I had a cup of water with me to dip my finger in. That helps smooth it over and make it nice and even along the trim and covering all the little holes. I caulked the edges too. That edge trim, that's pretty important because that's a big reason why I think that post and some of the old skirting got moldy and wet, is because when you don't caulk your trim, the water just works its way through the cracks and gets behind whatever the trim is covering. So hopefully now this skirting that I just did will last a lot longer because that caulking will harden, and then eventually I'm gonna paint that with 2 coats of paint. So it'll be covered, and when the rain hits it, it will just run right off the paint and then run right off the caulk and onto the ground. That's the idea anyways. I always wonder what people who are watching in Europe think of watching Americans build with wood and lumber and caulk and paint like this, because as I've been to Europe, I've been to England and France and Italy and Switzerland and Germany, and you all have hundreds of years old buildings and structures, and they're all made out of concrete, and they're awesome, and I love the architecture over there, and I think about that all the time. I'm sure you Europeans are like silly Americans building with wood and lumber that's just going to rot eventually. So yeah, last night I finished up the caulking, and I even had to crawl underneath the deck because I should have done all that before I put those deck boards on. That was kind of silly, but you know, I got it done right, covered all the little screw holes over everything, and then today I wrapped it up by putting screws in the rest of the deck boards. I drew a straight line so all my screws are nice and straight with each other. And I also added some brackets from the post to the beams. Some of you may be thinking like, dude, you need to add some bracing on those posts so that it's more solid, but I'm not worried about it. Once you screw the deck boards on and I put those brackets on, yes, technically, if I decided to crawl underneath there and kick one of those posts, I mean, I don't even know if I could do that. So it's, that deck is plenty sturdy for me. And then I also added some covers over those faucets. So that will help with freezing water. I still need to add a little bit of insulation on those fittings going from the outside to the crawl space, because there's a little bit of a gap where there's no insulation on the pipe. So I need to do that. But after that's done, all of the pipes on the underside will be insulated, including the lid that covers all of those fittings that I did under there. And then the door works pretty well, that latch. I'm really happy with it. I like the way it looks. I like the way it functions. Whoa. Now this project is not completely done yet. Next week, or like coming up in a few days, I'm going to start building handrail on the deck, and I'm going to match the original handrail on the deck that I very first built. I want to do those tree cutouts, my custom tree cutouts. I kept the original pickets for a template, so I'm going to build some handrail and stairs to go transition from the deck to the ground, because it's quite a large step. So building stairs, building handrail, that's next on my list. By the way, I don't know if I've talked about this since I made the video of installing this new stovepipe in here. It works fantastic, oh my gosh. And the ceiling fan in here, when that thing is turned up, it blows all the hot air from upstairs down, and it circulates really well throughout the cabin. And since I finished this entry room here, drywalled and insulated the whole thing, sealed it up and insulated really well around the door. Oh, it's so comfortable in here. It's awesome. And all my light switches work. And no, I have not burned down the cabin yet because of my dangerous electrical wiring that everybody claims is going to catch on fire and burn me. I'm not dead yet. And in an upcoming video, I do plan to install a breaker box. So look forward to that sometime. I don't know when, but that's in the plans. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and hopefully this gave you some ideas of things that you might be able to do. And clearly, I am not an expert at anything. I am just your average Joe that likes to do things for himself and has learned from previous experiences and is trying to get better. And I'm filming and editing, recording it, and posting it on the internet for hopefully some entertainment value and some motivation to get you out there and try to do things for yourself. Now it is time for me to sit in this chair and finish editing the video and posting it for you all to watch it. Looking forward to seeing you all next week when I build the handrail on the deck. See you on the next one. Thanks. Deck in place. Now what I'm going to do is remove